Notes and comments on Matthew 2. Introduction. We will now continue to share the overview of the Gospel of Matthew. Dispensational truths throughout. The Gospel of Matthew is the book of the beginnings of a new dispensation. In the Gospel of Matthew, as the Jewish Gospel, speaking of the King and the kingdom, dispensational throughout. Treating of the Jews, the Gentiles and even the Church of God in anticipation, as no other Gospel does, everything must be looked upon from the dispensational point of view. All the miracles recorded, the words spoken, the events which are given in their peculiar setting, every parable, every chapter from beginning to end, are first of all to be looked upon as foreshadowing and teaching dispensational truths. This is the right key to the Gospel of Matthew. 7 great dispensational parts. There are 7 great dispensational parts which are prominent in this Gospel and around which everything is grouped. We will briefly go over the 7 items. Let's start with 1. The King. The Gospel of Matthew proves that our Lord Jesus Christ is truly the promised King Messiah. In it we see him as King of the Jews. Everything shows that he is the royal person, of whom seers and prophets, as well as inspired psalmists, wrote and sang. First, it would be necessary to prove that he is legally the king. This is seen in the first chapter where a genealogy is given which proves his royal descent. The beginning is, the book of the generation of Jesus Christ, the son of David, the son of Abraham. Verse 1, it goes back to Abraham, and it stops there, whereas in Luke, the genealogy reaches all the way up to Adam. In the Gospel of Matthew, he is seen as son of David. His royal descent, son of Abraham, according to the flesh from the seed of Abraham. The coming of the Magi is only recorded in Matthew. They come to worship the newborn King of the Jews. His royal birthplace, David's city, is given. The infant is worshipped by the representatives of the Gentiles, and they do homage indeed before a true king, though the marks of poverty were around him. The gold they gave speaks of his royalty. The forerunner appears, and in Matthew his message to the nation is that, the kingdom of heaven has drawn nigh. The royal person so long foretold is about to appear and to offer that kingdom. In the 4th chapter we see the king tested and proven that he is the king. He is tested thrice, once as Son of Man, as Son of God and as the King Messiah. After the testing, out of which he comes forth victoriously, he begins his ministry. The Sermon on the Mount is given in Matthew in full. Mark and Luke report it only in fragments, and John has not a word of it. This shows the status of the 3 chapters which contain this discourse in this book. It is teaching concerning the kingdom and all its principles. If Israel had accepted the king, it would then have come, but the kingdom has been postponed. The kingdom will at last come with a righteous nation as a center, but Christendom is not that kingdom. In this wonderful discourse, the Lord speaks as the king and as the lawgiver, who expounds the law which is to rule his kingdom. From the 8th to the 12th chapters, we see the royal manifestations of him who is Jehovah manifested in the flesh. After the 10th chapter, the rejection begins. He is presented to Jerusalem as king, and the messianic welcome is heard. After that, we see his suffering and his death. In all his kingly character is brought out. And the Gospel closes abruptly, and has nothing to say of his ascension to heaven. But the Lord is, so to speak, left on the earth with all power in heaven and on earth. He rules in heaven now and on the earth when he comes again. We will continue with the rest of the items in the next message.